This is the final part of Professor Antony Sutton's book, An Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones, Part 4, The Secret Cult of the Order. And in this last section of the book, Professor Sutton deals with the secrecy that is associated with the Skull and Bones Society. He notes that while freedom is always associated with a political climate of openness and transparency, secrecy is, on the other hand, always associated with its opposite, coercion. Sutton quotes a book called 4 Years at Yale, which was published in 1871 by a man by the name of Lyman Bagg. He quotes this as the only source of documented information on the aspects of the order which are very secret and cult-like. And here are a few quotes from that book published in 1871. Quote, "They, the senior societies at Yale, are the only Yale societies whose transactions are truly secret, and their members never mention their names, nor refer to them in any way in the presence of anyone not of their own number. And as they are all seniors, there are no old members in the class above them to tell tales out of school." End quote. Professor Sutton provides source material to support his contention that the order operates with intense secrecy. One of these is a circular that was distributed among some higher members of the group, which has coded references to names and terms in it. And all of these sources are produced in the appendix at the end of this book. Sutton also says there have been a few attempts to break the secrecy of the order, and that a few whistleblowers generated some source material in the form of 2 pamphlets, 1 issue of a journal, and a chapter in a book. The pamphlet is very rare, and a facsimile of it is printed in the appendix of this book. One interesting thing Sutton notes about the pamphlet is that it is mentioned in it that the country of origin of the order was Germany. So therefore, he comments on the fact that the order is quite literally, a branch of a foreign secret society. The pamphlet is an account of a break-in at the meeting house of the order that took place in 1876. The meeting house of the order at Yale is called the Temple. During this break-in, memorabilia was confiscated that revealed the most sacred secrets, which were unveiled to the eyes of the uninitiated. A group of Yale students not in the order were responsible for the break-in, and they describe in detail the content of the temple, right down to how the walls were decorated. Another pamphlet, issued in 1876, is titled The Fall of Skull and Bones, and it is an anonymous satire of the group. It gives details about the initiation room of the temple and the meeting house of the order. This includes a description of a human skull found in one of the rooms. Sutton concludes that the members of the order seem to have a cult-like obsession with skulls, skeletons, and tombstones. The third source, a journal called the Epconoclast, was published in New Haven in 1873. Apparently, only a single copy of the issue still exists, and a facsimile of it is printed in the appendix in the book. The journal article describes Skull and Bones as a deadly evil and emphasizes their interest in political control. It concludes that the order gained control over the whole of Yale University. A quote from the journal says that, "Out of every class, Skull and Bones takes its men. They have gone out into the world and have become, in many instances, leaders in society. They have obtained control of Yale. Its business is performed by them. Money paid to the college must pass into their hands and be subject to their will." The last source is the article written by Ron Rosenbaum from Esquire magazine in 1977, entitled The Last Secrets of Skull and Bones. The 1940 initiation ceremony is described as follows: "New man placed in coffin, carried into central part of building. New man chanted over and reborn into society. Removed from coffin and given robes with symbols on them. A bone with his name on it is tossed into bone heap at start of evening. Initiates plunged naked into mud pile. With regard to the ritual aspects of the order, this is described as a closely guarded secret. Not much is known about it, and Professor Sutton admits that he has clandestine sources within the order that are not available to others who have investigated this topic. Among what is known is the following. Members are sworn not to discuss the organization, its procedures, or its objectives. Members may not even remain in the room if the order is being discussed, and any words spoken with the group may never be put on paper, even in letters from one member to another. Each year, 15 new members are put through what is described as a harrowing ordeal, probably some kind of hazing. According to Rosenbaum, one can hear strange cries and moans coming from the bowels of the tomb during the initiation ceremonies. The 4 parts of the initiation ceremony are, first, the initiates called knights have to lie naked in a sarcophagus. Second, each must tell the secrets of his sex life to all the other initiates. Then, leaders of the group called patriarchs dress as skeletons and act as wild-eyed lunatics who howl and scream at the new initiates. Initiates are required to wrestle naked in a mud pile. These are just the parts that Sutton uncovered through his sources. He notes that there's probably much more to all of this. In the 1977 Esquire article, Rosenbaum says that the real purpose of the order was to convert young members of the ruling class into morally serious leaders of the establishment. Sutton concludes that the ritual is cult-like with many satanic elements. He says the purpose of it is brainwashing, to create zombies out of a very small, privileged group of men who will continue the practices of the group from one generation to another. Significantly, Sutton points out that because of the intense secrecy of the order, its objectives cannot be compatible with those of the Constitution of the United States. And now for my comment, critique, and analysis. Well, first, I agree with Professor Sutton that Skull and Bones Society operates very much like a cult. The methods that are used to initiate members resemble practices that cults use. I've done quite a lot of research on secret societies and occult orders, so I'd like to make a few observations about that. First, the word occult simply means hidden. It derives from the Latin adjective occultus, hidden from sight, which comes from the Latin verb occultari, to hide, to conceal, to keep secret. Both, in turn, are derived from the Latin noun oculus, or eye. Occult information refers to hidden knowledge that is meant only for the initiated, not the masses. So just because a society or organization is part of the occult or has occult practices does not mean it is automatically sinister. The Hollywood conception of what the occult is a very limited perception that is wildly off base. There are 2 different arms, if you will, of occult practice. In simple terms, these are called the light occult and the dark occult. For example, there are 2 different practices of magic, white magic and black magic, or sorcery. The practice of magic in itself is not something that is inherently bad. It is all about the intentions of the magician who's practicing. It is the consciousness of the wielder of occult knowledge that determines whether it is good or evil. White magic is the use of occult knowledge which is employed toward the expansion of consciousness and morality. This is called light, L-I-G-H-T, occultism. That which is used for manipulation, control, and the suppression of consciousness, on the other hand, is called dark occultism or sorcery. This is a very simplified explanation of a topic that is anything but simple, of course, but I want to talk about why I'm bringing it up here. I have studied many of the forms of both white and black magic. There are secret societies that practice both forms. And why is the knowledge that is possessed by these groups kept occulted? Well, for different purposes. Light occultists of the past had to hide sacred knowledge in order to prevent its eradication during times like the Crusades or the Inquisition, when its practice meant death and subversion of its principles. Dark occultists, on the other hand, seek to create and maintain a power differential between those who have occult knowledge and those who do not. They use their knowledge to create fear, with the end game being manipulation and control by them. Dark occultists have completely infiltrated and permeated all of our institutions, and they use their occulted knowledge and practice of black magic to create fear, amass power, and put the human population in a state of slavery, as well as to keep us there. These are the ones who are really running the show here on Earth, and that includes financiers, corporations, politicians, high-level religionists, and of course the media. They have created a power differential between themselves and the masses who do not have the occulted knowledge. For a great lecture series on this, see Mark Passio's presentation on Demystifying the Cult, Part 1, and Part 2 of the presentation is called Satanism and the Dark Occult. And Mark is a former priest in the Church of Satan who now works for the raising of consciousness and talks a lot about how these dark occultists are operating in our society and what we can do about it. So going back to the initiation ceremony of the Order of Skull and Bones, I noticed it has some similarities to the initiation ceremony carried out by another secret society, Rosicrucianism. I was able to get a copy of a very old book called Fundamental Laws, a report of the 68th convocation of the Rose Cross Order, and this was printed and bound in India in 1916. This book is all about the beliefs and practices of the Rose Cross Order, which of course also is a secret society, and it includes a report of the work of ancient initiation in the Grove of Osiris. So again, practices of this group go all the way back to occult societies that operated even in ancient Egypt. I would describe the teachings in this book as definitely focused on the development of consciousness and morality, and so therefore this is an example of light occultism. On the other hand, the Skull and Bones initiation is steeped in dark occult practices, with its focus on death, skulls, human bones, mud wrestling, etc. It is not uplifting for the consciousness. The initiated members then go out into the world and infiltrate various organizations in society for the purposes of amassing power, wealth, and privilege. This is definitely an example of dark occultism. The idea that we have had several presidents, and two recent ones, the two Bushes, and a recent Secretary of State, John Kerry, that were initiated into this dark occult group of the Order of Skull and Bones, I find to be very disturbing. And finally, some questions to think about. How can we eliminate the power differential that exists between us and the dark occultists who use their knowledge for purposes of control and to keep us in a state of slavery? Do the dark occultists try to discourage people from looking into what it really is all about by producing Hollywood television programs and movies that, rather than truly inform, seek to distract people from learning the truth? I recall the film Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick. That film had a lot of disclosure in it about the dark occult. Kubrick died in his sleep from a heart attack, supposedly, hours after delivering a print of the film to the studio. Raise any additional questions in your mind? See you next time.